Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Cambodia launch of the Asian Economic Integration Report 2021, and in particular focusing on the theme chapter of the report, which is on digital platforms and the digital economy. On behalf of the Asian Development Bank, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. My name is David Friedman. I'm the ADB Country Economist based here in Cambodia, and I will be the moderator and the host for today's session. This webinar is being organized jointly by ADB and by the Ministry of Economy and Finance of the Royal Government of Cambodia. And on behalf of ADB, I would like to thank the Ministry of Economy and Finance for their partnership in organizing the event. We have with us today some quite senior staff from Asian Development Bank and also very senior officials from the Ministry of Economy and Finance. I would like to invite first Excellency Dr. Huot Phum, Secretary of State for Ministry of Economy and Finance, to give opening remarks on behalf of the Ministry of Economy and Finance. And then afterwards, we will also have some opening remarks from Dr. Yasuyuki Sawada, who's the ADB Chief Economist. If I may just briefly to introduce Dr. Phum, I'm sure that many, if not all of you, know him very well already. He's currently a Secretary of State at the Ministry of Economy and Finance. Quite recently, he was working for the ASEAN +3 Macroeconomic Research Office, also known as AMRO. And he spent 7 years there working on macroeconomic surveillance and based in Singapore. Dr. Phum holds a PhD in economics from France's Lumiere University in Lyon, and has been held various positions in the Ministry of Economy and Finance. Previously, he was responsible for financial markets and institutions, and also was the Deputy Director General of the Securities and Exchange Commission. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Phum, and please, Dr. Phum, over to you for opening remarks.
Okay, thank you so much, David. But first of all, I would like to clarify my position is under Secretary of State, not the Secretary of State. Yeah. Sorry. So you give me a bit higher position.
I promoted you. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, thank you so much for providing us the opportunity, and thank you for the ADB that have initiated this kind of webinar to allow the Ministry of Economy and Finance of Cambodia to join. So please allow me to start my opening remark. So first of all, I'd like to greet His Excellency Yasuyuki Sawada, the Secretary of State of Ministry of Economy and Finance of Cambodia. He's also the Deputy Chairman of the Digital Economy Working Group. So he's the right person that can help us to elaborate and discuss during the following session. I would like to greet Dr. Yasuyuki Sawada-san, the Chief Economist and the General Director of the ADB. So I have a good chance to know him and to work with him when I was at AMRO for a long time. I would like to greet our panelists and other participants. So, Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, today it is my great honors, to join the ADB and MEF webinars on digital platform and Cambodia post-COVID-19 economic recovery. I would like to take this opportunity to express my sincerest appreciation to the ADB, as well as the team from the Ministry of Economy and Finance of Cambodia for organizing these webinars amid the turbulent time. Indeed, this webinar is the perfect opportunity to strengthen our dialogue cultures between the government and key stakeholders, such as the development partner, ADB, for instance, academics, in the discussion of key issues such as the prospect of digital platform development in the context of Cambodia post-COVID-19 economic recovery. Since early 2020, the unprecedented socio-economic impact of COVID-19 remind the world years need to confront structural issues such as the public health and trade through digitalization. While the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic has caused severe public health crisis and the large-scale disruption of the global socio-economic developments, it has proven to be the critical juncture that mark the increasing significance of digitalization and digital solutions that bypass the limit to work and communicate physically. Particularly in the sector businesses and trade, the digital transformation is remarkable, as seen through increasing in online learning. E-commerce, electronic payment, and digital market spaces. In this regard, the promotion of digitalization is inevitably a global trend to recapture economic development and growth while allowing an even more interconnected regional and global integration. Due to this attribute, accelerating digitalization is indeed a critical policy for Cambodia post-COVID-19 economic recovery. Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, it is undeniable that Cambodia has been experiencing the blunt impact of the COVID-19 pandemics. As the country growth engines such as tourism and other key industries are in hibernation mode and all resources are pooled to combat the pandemics, the key to stabilize the economy depends on how soon the economy can fully reopen and embrace the new normal. In this sense, digitalization is the perfect solution that allows the economy to resume its activity sooner, while ensuring that the transition toward the new normal is less challenging. In this manner, the Royal Government of Cambodia has adopted digital platform, harnessing the digital technologies to enhance its ability to deliver better and uninterrupted services to the public, while facilitating various businesses and economic activity to stay afloat amidst the crisis. Particularly through the utilization of the QR code technologies that are synchronized with the geographical and health database, the government has created a simple COVID-19 QR code tracker that allows health authorities to easily track movement of the COVID-19 patients across the city, across the country for conducting tracing purposes, and more importantly, to enable businesses and some economic activity to remain open as the risk of transmission have been minimized due to its early warning system. In addition, the government has recently adopted the strategic plan of COVID-19 vaccine national campaign aiming at creating a social economic immunity in Cambodia by 2021, in which all key economic hotspots such as Phnom Penh, provincial capital, and industry cluster are prioritized to receive the COVID-19 vaccine by the end of 2021. In the foundation of this strategy plan lay an important cornerstone, ensuring that this ambitious plan will be achieved. This cornerstone is the COVID-19 vaccine online platform that allows accurate tracking of the vaccination campaign progress while ensuring that the stock and the quality of vaccine are updated and accountable. Meanwhile, various other forms of digitalized platform have also been used to provide better support and public services during the difficult time. In particular, the government has also just recently released an e-learning platform aiming to provide convenient access to all students for their online classes from grade 1 to grade 12. Additionally, the ID Poor database has made the cash transfer for the poor and vulnerable possible, and its ability to authenticate identity ensure that those in need will receive the support. Due to the usefulness of the database, a similar database and online platform is now currently being compiled to use to identify the near poor population in the lockdown area. I would like to highlight a little bit here like that. Because of the experience that we have a great outcome from the ID Poor database, we use a similar technology in order to identify the near poor people. Especially all these near poor people will be assisted by the government during the lockdown period. So, Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, beside the effort of the government to keep the business and economic activity to remain active despite the presence of the health measures such as the social distancing and lockdown, the government has understood the importance to adequately prepare for economic recovery once this pandemic subsides. Also, it cannot be stressed enough that the recovery will not be just for Cambodia to return back to its growth path, but it's also a perfect momentum for the government to kickstart a reform agenda. Needless to say, digitalization is one of the main agendas that the governments will approach to recover and reform the economy in the aftermath of the COVID-19 crisis for a more inclusive and sustainable growth. To prepare for this enormous task, the government have been preparing the digital economy and society policy platform, policy framework, which is to be launched in the near future to provide clear policy direction for Cambodia to digitalize its economy, society, as well as to use as a key strategy for economic recovery after the COVID-19 crisis. Under this policy framework, the digital data and platform are vital in adopting and leveraging the advanced technology. In this sense, key stakeholders that include the governments and the private sectors are required to work together to initiate and develop digital platforms that synchronize, that synergize, and co-create digital products and services to serve the people in a better outcome. Besides, to further promote and accelerate the digital adoption among people through broader and enhanced access to public services, the government will take the lead in establishing the state digital platform with enhanced digital content and diversified applications. As part of the rapid recovery strategy, a number of key digital platforms and infrastructure have already been introduced. Particularly, the government groundbreakings of the Cambodia Data Exchange, the CAMDEX, will be the fundamental platform that allows the government to develop further services such as the online business registration. I think that some of you maybe heard of that one. That is the online platform that allows the business people to register their businesses within a period of 8 days only. Other developments such as National Payment Gateway, the digital payment and central bank digital currency, the Mekong projects have been launched, and it is very convenient to transfer money interbank transaction at the moment. So a lot of things have been done to have that one. And I would like to highlight slightly about what the government is trying to do. We worry about the speed of the internet. And with the regional development, as well as in order to ensure that the internet speed is good enough for digitalization in the futures, the government is initiated some project in order to develop the 5G generation for the telecom industry. Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, Cambodia is optimistic that the digitalization and digital transformation will promote a resilient, inclusive economic development in the context of the Post-Covid-19 economic recovery. The success of the transformation will require the full support and collaboration from all stakeholders. In this period, I would like to appeal to all participants to capture the maximum capacity to use this webinar to further identify the way forward and to embrace with open arms the significance of the digital platform for Cambodia in its path to socio-economic recovery after the COVID-19 crisis. To the end, I would like to wish all of you, Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, excellent health with COVID-19 free, and I would like to wish the web seminar a great success going forward. Thank you so much.
Excellency, thank you. And if I may also just to acknowledge Excellency Ros Salava, the Secretary of State. We're very honored that you're joining us today and that you'll be giving some reaction to the presentation of the report and also sharing your perspectives in your many different capacities, including as the Deputy Chair of the Digital Economy Working Group. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much, all of you, for joining. We have, I think, more than 250 participants, and we have a very rich program. Thank you, Dr. Pum, for your opening remarks. We will soon be moving on to the presentation, and then we will have responses from our panelists. In addition to Excellency Salava, we also have Dr. Chang Vanarith from the Asian Vision Institute, and Mr. Sim Chankiriroth, founder and CEO of Banji, and then also Vice President of the Young Entrepreneur Association of Cambodia. But before we move on to the presentation and then discussion from panelists and also any Q&A from all of the participants, I'd like to invite ADB Chief Economist, Dr. Yasuyuki Sawada, to give opening remarks on behalf of ADB. If I may introduce briefly Professor Sawada. So he's ADB Chief Economist, and in that capacity, he's the chief spokesperson for ADB on economic and development trends. He leads ADB's Economic Research and Regional Cooperation Department, and he's originally from Japan, Japanese national, with a doctorate degree in economics and master's degree in international development policy from Stanford University in the US, a master's degree in international relations from the University of Tokyo, a master's degree in economics from Osaka University, and also a bachelor's degree in economics from Keio University. That's a lot of degrees, yeah. I don't know how you had the time to do all of that. But Professor Sawada is also a professor in the Faculty of Economics at the University of Tokyo, and has a distinguished career in applied economic research related to development. Sawada-san, welcome, and please over to you for opening remarks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, David, for a very nice introduction. And I know I have been taking a long and winding road to become a university professor and the chief economist of ADB. But in any case, His Excellency Ross Seraber, Secretary of State, Minister of Economy and Finance, MEF, His Excellency Fotkun, and the Secretary of State, MEF, Dr. Chiam Banaris, President of Asian Vision Institute, Mr. Shim Chankiros, Vice President of Young Entrepreneurs Association of Cambodia. ADB colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, very good morning and welcome to join ADB Ministry of Economy and Finance webinar on digital platform and Cambodia's post-COVID-19 economic recovery. So I'd like to provide a little bit background of today's event. Today, increased computing power and access to affordable smart devices have brought a digital economy into our hands, as we are all aware. They have also given birth to apps such as Grab, PassApp, Wing, Foodpanda, and Khmer24, which are changing the way we obtain and use information, order products and services, and make digital payments. Since last year, these apps have allowed the Cambodian economy to remain open despite the COVID-19 pandemic. Through Zoom meetings like us today, telehealth consultations, online education, and digital payments, many Cambodians have been able to continue their daily activities with little risk of infection. The increased use of this digital platform is expected to continue this year and in the years to come. Based on our recent study to be presented later, if digital sectors expanded by 20% from year 2020 baseline to year 2025, global output would rise by 4.3 trillion annually, Asia's output by 1.7 trillion yearly. So enormous benefit to be generated by development of digital economy and digital transaction. However, while digital platforms and big data are helpful, they are also very disruptive. They tended to ease out traditional businesses, raise privacy and cybersecurity concerns, introduce dominance from the big tech firms, and also create tax arbitrage and loopholes. And also digital divide is a big concern. More importantly, key sectors like agriculture, tourism, and manufacturing are also catching up with more slowly and could be vulnerable if they don't embrace innovation and digitalization more fully. These issues must be addressed carefully in order to maximize economic benefit on one hand and minimize the risk on the other hand. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we are at Asian Development committed to supporting Cambodia's aspiration in order to build a digital economy and society. Our country partnership strategy, CPS, for Cambodia will help Cambodia to become a competitive, digital, inclusive, and green economy. As such, we are helping the government to develop digital platform for e-government and service delivery. For example, under the Supporting Digital Cambodia for Inclusive Development project, we are helping to improve government's effectiveness and efficiency in delivering social assistance programs by mainstreaming digital technologies in public administration. Finally, but not least, ADB also provides research and advisory support to the government of Cambodia and its people. On that note, I'm looking forward very much to a very intriguing presentation today, and also lively and productive discussion. Thank you. Thank you very much. And again, a very good morning. Over to you, David.
Thank you, Yasu. We will now invite our colleague James Villafuerte, Senior Economist in ADB, to present a summary of the theme chapter from the Asian Economic Integration Report. In case you're not aware of this report, it's an annual publication that ADB releases, covering the latest trends and analysis on regional cooperation and integration across Asia, and focusing on trade, investment, financial flows, and also the movement of people. So each year the report is published, it has a theme chapter, and this year the theme chapter was focusing on digital platforms in the digital economy. We'll paste a link to the report and the website in the chat box, so you can access the full report and also look at other information in the Asia Regional Integration Center, which ADB supports. So with that, I would like to invite colleague James Villafuerte to now give a presentation on the theme chapter. James is currently acting as country economist for Indonesia and is now also the senior economist in Southeast Asia Regional Department, having recently moved from our Economics and Research and Regional Cooperation Department. He's a seasoned macroeconomist with over 15 years of work experience, both in development finance institutions, but also working for government on macroeconomic policy, economic modeling, regional cooperation, and other analysis. If I may, I think we can invite James. Perhaps if you could switch on your camera, and if you're ready to also share the presentation. Yeah.
Thank you, David. Let me just share my screen.
Yeah, while you're sharing, there was, I think there's a question from Visotti asking whether we could share the keynote address. And I think, yes, I think everyone registered for this webinar using an email address. So we will send to everyone copies of the opening remarks that were prepared and also a copy of the presentation. For now, I'll just post the links to the report and also to the Asian Regional Integration Center ADB website there. But yeah, we will send the other information later via email. So James, over to you. Please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Can you see my screen and also hear me clearly?
Yes, can.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My presentation today will comprise of 4 parts. First, I will show a short movie about the publication that we launched last February. Then I will discuss about the digital transformation that has brought immense benefits and as well as challenges to all of us. Then I will shift the discussion to Cambodia to show how Cambodia has benefited and will benefit with this digital transformation, including some case studies on apps, super apps that try to provide greater financial inclusion for business in Cambodia. And then I will discuss how digital platforms are helping attain social development goals as well as improve COVID-related policymaking before giving my concluding remarks. So let me now move on to the video.
The COVID-19 pandemic is accelerating digitalization, transforming how we work, socialize, and create economic value. Today, tech companies play a leading role in the global economy. They optimize business operations to expand markets, connect people, and empower small businesses. Digital platforms also deliver essential services, including critical ones like health and education. They provide credit to SMEs by utilizing data on their operations. They also create entirely new jobs, unheard of just a few years ago. Consumers, businesses, households, and governments alike enjoy many benefits from digital platforms. However, digital platforms disrupt markets and businesses. Increasingly, online businesses contribute to shop closures and the loss of jobs. They also create gig work with little job security or protection. Regulators still need to resolve tax leakages. And big tech erodes domestic competition for some countries. There are issues surrounding loss of privacy, cybersecurity, and misinformation. Also, the gap between the tech haves and the tech have-nots could exacerbate inequality. Internet access must be made more inclusive across developing Asia. Closing the digital divide, particularly for women and the elderly, is critical. How can we all work together to ensure digital platforms promote inclusive development in Asia and the Pacific? To find out, read the latest Asian Economic Integration Report.
I hope you like the short video presentation of our report. Indeed, digital platforms have transformed marketplaces. Example, in Cambodia, PassApp, Nam24, they are the go-to app if you want to travel around the city or order your favorite food like amok and sticky pudding. As mentioned by Dr. Pum, Bakong also has recently been developed to provide Cambodians online payment systems for their banking needs. And in agriculture, we also have the KIU and AgriBody, which are actually delivering a smarter credit scoring system so that farmers can actually develop access credit. So indeed, our lives have changed with this digital transformation. Just to give you a sense of how important this digital economy is, this chart gives you the B2C revenue generated by digital platforms globally and in the region in 2019. So as you can see on the right-hand side, globally in 2019, digital platforms have generated 3.8 trillion revenue, and this is equivalent to 4.4% of global GDP. For the region, digital platforms have actually generated 1.8 trillion revenue, equivalent to over 6% of the regional's GDP. About half of these revenues are mostly generated from e-commerce transactions, which have grown rapidly, especially with the lockdowns as a result of the pandemic, and also online travel, although we know that tourism and travel has actually taken a big hit. More importantly, Asia is in the center of the global digital platform competition, and these actually arise from the large numbers of users in Asia. In the chart, the bubble actually depicts the size of digital platform users, and you can see that the red bubbles, which is actually regions and sub-regions in Asia, shows you a very large role. So for example, for e-commerce, we have about 3.2 billion global digital platform users. About 60% of that, or 1.9 billion, actually resides in Asia. On the vertical axis, the chart also shows you the per capita spending in the different regions and sub-regions. And what you can see is the per capita spending in Asia, for example, is still way below $500, whereas in the US, it's almost $2,000. That's why most technology companies are coming into the region, because they know that there's a large room for growth in terms of per capita spending. And the same can be said in terms of penetration rate. So when you look at the penetration rate of digital platform in Asia, it's still quite low, below 60%, whereas in the US or Europe, it's over 80%. So again, there's much room for growth, and this actually provides much growth opportunities for digital platform in the region. There are three basic transmission mechanisms by which digital platform actually spread benefits to sellers, to buyers, as well as the platform itself. So the most important channel is actually the innovation channel, which stem from the technology-enabled networks that has been created by this digital platform. So this platform conducts online matching. They deliver products and services on demand. They are able to allow business to skip intermediaries in trade costs, therefore reducing barriers. And they also enhance production productivity by integrating payment, distribution, ratings with the ordering of the good. For the sellers, digital platforms have actually promoted greater inclusion. And they've done this by providing access to data and information, which allows sellers larger market reach, which actually allows them to expand their product range and also allows them to use spare assets for more flexible participation in the global production. For the buyers, digital platform also provides benefits through greater efficiency, wider choices, greater convenience, and greater customization. So in our study, we've conducted a CGE analysis to answer the question, what would be the macroeconomy-wide benefits if the usage of digital inputs or if the size of the digital sector globally increased by 20% from 2020 to 2025. And as Yasu said, what this increase in global input, in digital input usage means is that global output can increase to over 4.3 trillion a year. And for Asia, the increase in output is almost 1.7 trillion a year, which is equivalent to 6.1% of baseline 2020 GDP. The trade impact for Asia is also large. It's around an additional trade of about 1 trillion a year, which is equivalent to 6.8% of the 2020 baseline trade. In terms of jobs, this increased usage of digital inputs can actually create an additional global jobs of about 140 million. And for Asia, it will create an additional jobs of 66 million. Among the subregions in Asia, the Pacific, Central Asia, and Southeast Asia are the subregions that are actually benefiting the most. And some countries such as Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, the Philippines, Vietnam also benefits a lot. So these benefits from digital transformation actually comes from three things. One is the ability of digital platform to address geographical challenges such as sea lock or landlock. Second, technology also allows economies to leapfrog the development cycle. And thirdly, they also help economies increase digitally enabled trade and services. However, as Yasu mentioned, the emergence of digital platforms also saw a number of risks and challenges arising. And one of them actually is the digital divide, which could actually lead to rising inequality. For example, we have seen during the lockdown phases that poorer households who do not have access to digital connectivity and smart devices are unable to actually continue to send their kids to school. And because of this digital divide, we know that the educational outcome post-COVID will also be different. Another sad fact is that digital platforms are highly concentrated, and these large technology giants actually risk
I think we've lost James.
assume excessive most of the, pardon?
Sorry, James, you froze for a moment. I think the last thing you were saying was these large platforms. So maybe just
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
So let me just repeat. So these digital platforms are also highly concentrated and quite large, wielding enormous market power. The impact on labor market is also quite worrisome because most of the workers in the digital platforms have very little social protection. More importantly, the intensive collection of data also raises a large data privacy and security concerns, as well as the potential for cybercrime and identity theft. For government, the shift to digital activities have actually seen an erosion of tax collection, and base erosion and profit shifting have become a rising global concern. More importantly, Asia is quite diverse in terms of its readiness to leverage on this digital technology. So here I present three groups of countries. The one on the right-hand side are actually the emerging countries, which are on a nascent stage in terms of using digital technology. Then you have the middle countries, which are actually strengthening their use and adoption of technology. And then last but not the least are the advanced countries, which are actually quite digitally enabled. So Cambodia actually belongs to the third country, but it's actually on the top. So we really need to come up with regulations and also investments in ICT to ensure that the countries on the third group can actually catch up. There are 6 key priorities that can actually help unlock the digital potential. The first one is actually to increase and enhance digital connectivity. In LDCs, we know that only 19% of the population is online. And that's what Yasu mentioned earlier. We need to enhance that. Improvement in e-payment options are also quite important because this is actually a transactional technology that will allow us to use the power of digital economy. Because we still need to interface the online transactions with logistics and actual delivery, we'll need to also invest in ports, roads, as well as in shipping connectivity. Digital skills and literacy training are quite important. And what we know is that in the next 2 years up to 2025, about 150 million new jobs in technical areas will be needed in the region. And as our resource requirement going into the pandemic, as our fiscal space going into the pandemic narrows, we need better cooperation to ensure that we come up with better taxation policies and options to actually minimize tax leakage and tax loopholes. Last May, during the ADB annual meeting, President Massa launched the International Tax Hub. And one purpose of that cooperation is actually to increase the participation of ADB member countries in the OECD global framework, as well as in the framework for BEPS. Last but not the least, we also need smart and robust laws, rules, and regulations for data privacy and cybersecurity. Let me now shift to how Cambodia has actually benefited from digital platform. In terms of digital platform, B2C, digital platform revenue, 470 million revenues were actually collected in Cambodia in 2019. And about 2/3 of these revenue generations were coming from online travel and e-commerce. In terms of digital platform users, there's about 7.2 million Cambodians who are actually users of the digital platform. If you look at the 470 million revenue generated in Cambodia, this is actually less than 1% of the digital platform revenue generated in ASEAN, which tells me actually that there's a large room for growth in terms of digital activities in Cambodia. Our simulation analysis suggests that if the usage of digital inputs in Cambodia increases by 20% from 2020 to 2025, there will be a large output and employment gains. So in terms of output, we expect that on average, output will increase by 9.7% of the 2020 baseline, or over 2 billion additional output per year. In terms of employment, we expect that increased digital usage in Cambodia could actually contribute to approximately 300,000 additional new jobs. So these numbers are quite important. I mentioned to you that in Cambodia, AgriBuddy, for example, is one fintech application that has worked with Akleda to actually improve access to agricultural credit. So this AgriBuddy improves the credit scoring and actually increases the rate of return in terms of agricultural lending. This is a very successful case study of a fintech company partnering with a bank. And overall, the outcome of this exercise is that about almost 2,000 farmers were able to avail of almost 250,000 credit. The ADB has also been supporting the promotion of financial inclusion through fintech in the GMS and Cambodia. And one of this actually is the KIU, an IT service company based in Vietnam, which has partnered with several banks in Vietnam, Cambodia, and Myanmar to again increase access of SMEs to credit and finance. So the final outcome is within the GMS subregion, around 8,000 SME clients have actually availed of loans of up to 50,000 per client. Let me now shift to the last part of my presentation in terms of how digital platforms can also contribute to the attainment of the SDGs. So here you have the SDG goals on the left-hand side, and you have the digital platform applications on the right-hand side. And as you can see, for example, e-commerce can actually support women to have more income earning activities. It can also help the formalization and growth of MSMEs and link rural producers and urban consumers to financial markets. On labor on demand have also allowed flexible work arrangement, which has provided more earning opportunities for some of our labor. On the health and the education sector, we know that telehealth as well as education technology have actually allowed us to access high quality service, high quality medical service, as well as high quality courses and instructors through MOOCs. The other important role of digital platform is in terms of big data. During the COVID-19 pandemic, our experience is that one realization is that there is limited data availability in terms of helping government sharpen some of its intervention in COVID-19. So for example, the Bayan-Bayanihan in Manila, we have a very old list of poor communities. So what ADB did was to actually use satellite data as well as nightlight to come up with a more granular view of where the poor people affected by the pandemic are. So I think relying on big data or e-platform to enhance policy is important. Big data are high frequency, high velocity, and high volume data, such as nightlight, satellite maps, telco data, Google search data, internet data, traffic data, shopping data, dining data, or even flight and shipping data that actually provides a good insight in terms of people's activities and livelihood. And many governments in the region are tapping onto this big data to improve their policies and unleash the potential of the platform economies. So let me conclude with a few key messages. So we know that digital platform will definitely propel Asia and Cambodia's economic recovery in the post-pandemic period. However, risks and challenges, including privacy and cybersecurity, tax arbitrage and loopholes, and anti-competitive behavior are there, and they will require critical, appropriate policies and regulations. A menu for success is to develop affordable and quality ICT infrastructure, to strengthen the seamless digital connectivity, invest in digital skills and literacy, develop secure online payment system, provide financial access for innovative startup, and also strengthen the formation of efficient e-government and regulation. Here are some of the ADB knowledge products and technology, and I think we will be happy if Ministry of Economy and Finance or some of our viewers are interested to get a copy of these studies. Thank you for your attention, and back to you, David. Thank you.
Great, James, thank you so much. Excellent presentation and very informative, very thought-provoking. For all of our attendees, there will be opportunities to ask questions. If you do have a question, you can post into the chat box, and then we will try to organize with the moderation to respond. But now I would like to invite Excellency Ros Selava, Secretary of State, to maybe just to share some response, some thoughts on the presentation. I'm sure that Excellency Selava is well known to everyone in the audience, but just in case, please allow me to introduce Excellency Selava. So he's the Secretary of State in the Ministry of Economy and Finance, also the Secretary General for the General Secretariat of the PFM Reform Steering Committee, member of the Supreme National Economic Council, Chairman of the Board of Directors of the Agricultural and Rural Development Bank, and currently Deputy Chair of the Digital Economy Working Group. Excellency Selava has a bachelor's degree in social science and a master's degree in international affairs and economic policy management from Columbia University in New York. Excellency, once again, thank you for being with us today for the webinar. And please, it would be great if you could share your reactions and thoughts in response to the presentation.
Thank you, David. Good morning to everyone. Mr. Hutpum, Undersecretary of State. On behalf Dr. Yasuyuki Sawada, Chief Economist and Director General of ADB. Mr. James Villafuerte, Senior Economist, ADB, and other colleagues who are the panelists in this forum, and everyone who joined in this conference. So first, I would like to express my thanks for the invitation to join this dialogue. I think it's very relevant. I also thank for ADB for sharing the economic integration report with us, and thank James for the very informative presentation about the status of digital platform development globally and in the context of Cambodia as well. So a big thank to James in this regard. So today I try to provide my comment from perspective of ABF because my responsibility encompasses several areas, so that I can somehow contribute some comment on the role of the ministry and how we take this idea forward. So are you aware that Ministry of Economy and Finance is leading institution? We coordinating the economic active development in general, especially with regard to digital economy, digital platform, and you mentioning about the working group on digital economy. So this is our role as a facilitator and a strategic coordinator. We also the one of the big client or the buyer of the service from digital platform. So I expect that if you thinker if can engage Ministry of Finance, I think you get a big support. So big demand for this platform. Third role, I think Ministry of Economy and Finance responsible for macroeconomic fiscal policy, strategic decision on public finance, and especially on investment. So investment in ICT or investment in digital platform, I think would be part of our decision. So here, I think we would be one of the players and one of the stakeholders in this endeavor. Last, I think I would say that before we are thinking of digital economy, digital platform as a long-term vision, kind of part of our 2030 or 2050 vision about transformation, and we understand digital economy and all the technology, fintech, and so on as a trigger to transformation, long-term transformation. But the crisis trigger us that come very quickly, and I think the COVID-19 crisis changed the landscape in our interaction, in our action, and I noticed that ADB used to be not in the area of ICT or the ICT or digital economy, but now you are here, so I'm very happy to say that we have a big partner who now interested in this topic. For myself, I think with digital platform like the Zoom, for example, I become more efficient. I can conduct a lot of meetings in one day, but although less human interaction. So anyway, there a big change here. So my first comment, I think, first, I would like to comment on the way how digital transformation impact on policy decision and policy making process. The topic very relevant now, not just in the context of COVID-19, but also for long-term transformation. We start to think about the post-COVID recovery plan. So I think part of the economic diversification and the new source of income for the economy, I think digital platform and the provision of big data is part of the consideration in terms of the thinking. So we work on that, and I think the government almost finalized the policy framework with this. For the long term, I think there are a lot of work and maybe involve not just an idea, but the start building the institution, the process, and so on, so that we can be ready. I will talk about the work on the formulation of the digital economy policy framework to close my remark. So I don't want to touch it here. But I want to say that the digital economy, though there are some setback or implication, but there are a lot of benefit, especially in terms of promoting growth in a new normal and sustainability and inclusiveness in terms of the economic development. Second, I want to touch about the benefit of platform global. I think there is one thing that I want to say, that in terms of the economic behavior, the economic model, definitely there are going to be an inclusive and a quality growth. Second, there would be a spillover effect, because they're going to develop a new value chain that's different from the traditional value chain, where you have trade, production, or distribution, and so on. But here it's a value chain between the seller, the supplier, the platform holder, and the buyer, and the sophistication of interaction. So I would sum up in a way, in one word, that a new value chain of things. So that's very beneficial, I think, including employment, income, and the quality of life and quality of human interaction. That's my point here about the benefit of this digital platform and even the big data thing. Third, to facilitate this process, I think the role of the government is very crucial. One thing, I think the innovation investment might come from private sector, but ecosystem needs the role of the government. the government need to put in place a regulatory framework and infrastructure that allow the business to grow, the platform to be established. We need to build trust, and also the government need to ensure the fair distribution of the benefit and wealth, because the concentration of power of the digital platform, I think, would have implication in terms of inequality and the unfair distribution of wealth and so on. So the government need to play a strategic coordination role, as well as need to invest resources in build up a good ecosystem for that purpose. So in this regard, to update you on what the government doing in terms of this regulatory ecosystem or trust, I think recently we just transform the work of non-bank financial sector regulator into an authority we call non-bank financial service authority. So in the establishment of this new centralized regulator for non-bank financial sector, we have an idea and we established a unit called FinTech unit, who focus on I think on the research and study that fit into the development of digital platform, fintech and so on. But one of the special thing, I think we are going to establish a platform called Sandbox, kind of regulatory special regulatory framework allow business in innovation in fintech to grow in a separate environment before they can let into the general ecosystem of financial sector. So that the thinking on the regulator from the regulatory perspective with this regard. And at the top, as I mentioned, we're going to establish a council for digital economy, so on and so forth, to contribute to this. My fourth point on the implication on key public service delivery. The presentation point out very clearly the benefit contribute to education, health, infrastructure, or social protection, and so on. Here, I just want to update you that in the COVID-19, we benefit from the availability of digital payment, like the Wing, for example. We use that for purpose of cash transfer. So though it's not really a digital platform, I think it is a stepping stone to using a digital platform for the social assistance, social protection services provided to the citizen. So, but in the Council for Social Protection, we are working on building the data center, the digital platform, so that we generate data, so that we can make a better decision in terms of providing social assistance and social protection services. So that's the plan going forward. Also, I think in the ministry, we have several platforms like the FMIS payment system, or the system at the Customs General Department. So also make the best use of the digital platform. So I think big data and digital information will help us make a better policy decision. My fifth point on maybe some of the consideration and some information about kind of services that the AMIF is working on that related to digital economy. I think you might aware that the government is channeling financing to support SME, and we have ADB, we have SME bank, and we have a credit guarantee scheme called CG. So in the design and in the planning process, we incorporate the use of the application of digital platform, digital technology in that regard. So I hope that this institution could use the practice to outreach the customer and to improve the services to customer. So I take a lot of time, but just want to close my comment quickly on the work of the working group with regard to the draft of policy framework. So far, we almost done of the draft of the policy framework, but there are still some consideration about the institutional arrangement of this. So we are considering a council with 3 separate committee on e-government or digital government, the digital society, digital business. There are 3 separate committees, and also having a strong secretariat or institution to support the work of this mechanism. But there are still discussion on that. But for the structure of the digital economy policy framework and the digital economy development, I think first we give consideration to the new culture of digital culture, that interaction between human, between people, the public state, public service, and the businesses. That considering the linkage between seller, platform, and also the big data, the customer, the buyer. Second consideration about the framework of interoperability. That includes on one side the data, on the other side is the platform. And I think you are aware that Camtax is one of the platforms that the government have been working on. The third element we try to include is build the foundation, including the cloud infrastructure, digital security, and also the internet and communication infrastructure. So here is just a summary of the structure of the framework on the digital economy. So I stop here, and I wait for any question if there is any. Sorry, David, take a bit long.
No need to apologize. Thank you. That was, I think, very informative. And in the course of sharing your observations and also giving some information about the government's plans, you also actually addressed a couple of the questions that had come in on the Q&A, including the question from, I think it was Carlo, about the mechanisms for the coordination across government, from Carlo Santoro. So I think that was clear. Excellency, in your comments, you touched on some really important points, I think, about the way in which digital platforms restructure value chains and create both new opportunities, but also requirement for interventions from government to create an enabling environment and stimulate innovation, but also to maintain competitive neutrality and an open market. And there's an interesting tension there. So it was interesting to hear about the plans for the sandbox and also your reflections on how these trends have been accelerating since COVID-19 started. Maybe we could now turn to our second panelist, Dr. Van der Rith. Dr. Van der Rith, you may want to, in sharing your response, perhaps to touch on some of the themes that have come up in the Q&A. But before I hand over to you, please, maybe I can introduce you to all of the attendees. For anyone who doesn't already know Dr. Chiang Van der Rith, he is a public policy analyst and government relations strategist, and currently is serving as the president of the Asian Vision Institute. He has over a decade of experience as a geopolitical and geoeconomic analyst, focusing on Southeast Asia, and was formally identified as a young global leader by the World Economic Forum in 2013. Dr. Van der Rith received his bachelor's degree in international relations from the Diplomatic Academy of Vietnam, MA in international relations from the International University of Japan, and PhD in Asia Pacific Studies from Ritsumeikan Asia Pacific University. So Dr. Van der Rith, thank you so much for joining us. And if you, perhaps over to you, if you could share your observations and perhaps touch on some of the issues in the Q&A as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David, and Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It's my honor and pleasure to share with you my perspective on digital platforms and digital economy. I fully support the findings that James has mentioned earlier by the ADB, but it would be grateful if you could elaborate more. I mean, the report elaborate more on the digital economy and SDG, the connectivity and how digital platform contribute to SDG. Of course, you have one slide on that, but we want to see more a practical kind of correlationship and the impacts. I really like the presentation of His Excellency Ruth Selava, especially with regards to the creation of the National Council. I would suggest that to have it as a functioning body, you need to recruit more professional, not a politician, to work in the secretariat, because my observation is many interministerial bodies do not function because they are busy politicians. They need to go to the field works all the time, almost every month or every 3 months. So it will not work. So I encourage the council to consider adding more professional to that council. I have I had 7 C's here as a policy recommendation moving forward. First, capacity. The first C is the capacity. I think the reports have highlighted the digital literacy as one of the 6 policy recommendations. But I think the capacity building for the public and the private sector is really essential here. Look at the e-government that Cambodian government is trying to introduce, but how many ministry and how many ministers can use Zoom for online meeting or can use e-signature, for instance, right? So that is the fact on the ground that even though we talk a lot on digital transformation, but I think many public institutions had not been digitalized yet. So we need to build capacity for them. It's a massive effort in the capacity building for the government official in order to promote the digital government. I think the private sector have a brighter spot because it is the more market driven. So I think the private company, the speed of transformation, digital transformation is much faster than the speed of the public sector. So, so that capacity building is not only for the private sector, but I think also for the public sector. The second C here is coordination. I think Excellency Selava mentioned about the challenges. I think that one of the delay of the issuance of the digital policy platform is the consideration of institutional arrangement. It refers to coordinations, how the public government agency can have this kind of seamless coordinations to reduce to maximize or optimize the resources, the limited resources that we have in order to avoid duplication, those kind of overlapping areas of state functionings. So that is very critical. Looking at the digital economy, at least 3 ministries, right, working on it now: Ministry of Post and Telecom, Ministry of Economy, Finance, and Ministry of Commerce, kind of a key leading government agency in promoting this kind of digital transformation. So I think this council that to be formed will have a key role, that is to coordinate all government state agencies. Second C here is competitiveness. In the report, ADB, you mentioned about fair competition or competitive neutrality, but I would like to add the competitiveness here is to increase the competitiveness of the local tech startup and tech companies, because this is critical. In order to have a more inclusive digital economy, you need to have a homegrown tech startup and ecosystem to support them, so that competitiveness can be enhanced for the local SME. Otherwise, there's no chance to compete with the big giants when it comes to apps development and platform economy. So I'm not protectionist, but we need to consider this inclusive economy by empowering the local enterprises to increase their competitiveness. My 4th C here is connectivity. I think you already mentioned about the connectivity, digital connectivity. Digital connectivity here is not only within the country, but it needs to go cross boundary. So, so within ASEAN framework, or within the Mekong framework, or Indo-Pacific framework, or even within the Belt and Road framework that we have digital silver. So I think digital connectivity is very important, but I think the level of understanding, especially from the policy perspective, I think is still limited. So I think this keyword of connectivity when it comes to digital platforms from a different angle need to be more discussed and elaborated. My another C is cybersecurity. My 6th C here is cybersecurity. You mentioned about cybersecurity and the risks and challenges in digital platforms. This is perhaps, from my perspective, the top challenge for Cambodia, because the vulnerabilities of open economy and digitally integrated economy is very high, especially for a small economy like Cambodia. Without having a very resilient and strong cybersecurity infrastructure, I don't think the digital economy works. Even the digital government will not work, because within the context of highly fluid international order and geopolitical environment, I think many countries are become more vulnerable to cyber attacks by state and non-state actors, right? Both state and non-state actors. So I think this is something that we need to work more on. And within the council, Excellency Silva mentioned about cybersecurity or digital security. But I think if we can add this as a committee, in addition to the 3 committees that you mentioned, digital government or digital society and digital business, and then we have another committee on digital digital security, that would be important to support the digital activity and infrastructure. Last but not least, the 7th C that I have is Cambodianization. I share the view with James that development, digital transformation need to happen from within, right? So Cambodianization of digital transformation need to be explored, and this is this relative national ownership of digital transformation. So we should not rely much on external partners. Of course, they are important stakeholders, but we need to build our self-reliance, national ownership, independence to some degree on digital platform and digital economy. So I would like to end my remarks here. Thank you very much for the opportunity, David. Back to you.
Dr. Vanner, thank you so much. The 7 C's, that's memorable. I think, yeah, that's excellent points, and a lot of food for thought, both in terms of some suggestions or proposals to government on public policy, but also some views around the role of private sector and the need for the development of a vibrant local private sector ecosystem. That brings us nicely to our last panelist, Mr. Sim Chan Kiriroth. I'm sure again that many of our participants will know Kiriroth well, but allow me, please, just to quickly introduce him. Mr. Kiriroth is the founder and CEO of Banji, which is a tech-based, or mobile platform offering accounting services, and also vice president of the Young Entrepreneurs Association of Cambodia. As an entrepreneur, he has extensive experience in the finance sector in both executive and advisory roles. His experience includes having been the finance director, co-founder, and managing partner of a financial consulting firm and also an audit firm, and also to having been the finance advisor to 3 of the largest conglomerates in Cambodia. He's a member of the governing council of the Kampuchea Institute of Certified Public Accountants and Auditors, and also a member of the board of directors of the Cambodian CFO Association. He's a member of the Association of Certified Chartered Accountants and the Institute of Certified Public Accountants and Auditors. Kiriroth, thank you so much for joining us for the webinar today. We've heard a bit about the importance of developing a vibrant local ecosystem, supporting Cambodian SMEs, developing local platforms. Could you share your experience, maybe perhaps your personal experience as a founder, as an entrepreneur of a digital platform, and then maybe perhaps the perspective or the issues that the members of your association face also. So Kiriroth, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Thank you for having me in this very important webinar. The view that I'm sharing today is mainly representing the Young Entrepreneur Association of Cambodia, and of course, also from my experience running a fintech startup. So I totally agree that the growth of digital platform as an intermediation between buyer and seller, it's very obvious here, particularly for the last, excuse me, for the last 2 years. As an association for the Young Entrepreneur Association, digital adoption for MSME is one of the top 6 strategic priority for our 2025 strategy. We conduct various study and consultation with more than 600 MSME in 5 provinces. And digital adoption is one of the main challenge, particularly on the adoption of the technology. Access to technology is not really a challenge, but adopting the technology is the main challenge. And another one is the business model innovation to leverage that type of technology. I'd like to comment on the presentation on 3 points. The first one is the digital inclusion. With the advance of technology, of course, we know that a certain portion of the economy can really benefit from it. But mainly the rural enterprise and people who are operating at the province level are not really left out, but it's somehow also facing those challenges, particularly using access to the digital device, access to digital platform with their own existing device. That is one of the challenges. Certain, regardless of how digital platforms are adopting to various digital device, they remain a challenge. Like if it is an Android application and particularly enterprise application, mobile is remain a challenge. It's either tablet or moving into a laptop, and the knowledge, digital literacy remain very low in the province. And another challenge for SME, what we see in report is that the digital platform in the case is mainly around the one who are connecting SME to the buyer or the B2B, B2C. But another part, it's the platform that enabling them to, like for the business themselves, to enable them to leverage those type of platform. It's a challenge. One is the affordability to use the platform. Another one is the knowledge. But the key underlying challenge is the business model itself. Most of the business in Cambodia at the moment are kind of like entrepreneurship driven by necessity. So when we ask them how can they adopt the business model to leverage those digital platforms that all are being offered in the market or using technology to deliver their product and service, that's kind of the answer is they don't know. And that's a huge need to support to get them on board into this digital journey. Recently, we did a study on digital adoption of SME in Cambodia, and we also developed a digital majority index for Cambodia with the support of EU for the association. And what we found out is that on the range from 1 to 4, Cambodian MSME are mainly at 1, at 2, at level 2, mainly using technology in the area in one of the 4 dimensions, which is sales and customer involvement. And that's an kind of a relevant result because COVID really drive SME to focus on their sales and the customer involvement. But operation, business model, the business organization, the digital talent, and human resource management, the majority is very low. Even the model is being tested, studied, but it remain. There's a need for more validation for it to become, even potentially to become a reference document for the national study. And the reason why we go into this digital majority index, because we see there's a lot of report done for Cambodian MSME, but the comparability level, it's kind of very difficult to compare where Cambodian MSME are in terms of digital adoption. And when we did the study, we found out there are 3 main factors that influencing them to use the digital technology. Is one, improving revenue and customer engagement. That's one of the main reasons. Another one is the improve operational efficiency, why they adopt technology. And the third one is to enhance quality of information for them to make a decision. But we see that the top decision is improving revenue, and it's relevant to report about a digital platform who are offering digital service, e-commerce, and around how can we connect buyer to seller. But the top 3, there's a lot of barrier, but the top 3 barrier is limited digital skill and knowledge for both the owner and employee. We talk about the talent, but most of the time we forget that the owner themselves doesn't know technology. And when the owner doesn't see the need of technology, then there's no incentive for them to invest in technology. Even they understand that they need the type of technology, but they need those knowledge and in-depth understanding on how can they adopt technology within the business. The second one is the digital technology related cost. For them to use a digital platform to sell, this costs virtually nothing. Revenue sharing and all of that it's a transaction based. But to enable them to perform better, in terms of adopting those technology, they need their own operation software, and those are, it's term of cost acquisition, maintenance, and related advisory costs. It's remain a barrier. And the last one is the quality and availability of the service provider here in Cambodia, particularly in the province. So that's the first comment related to the digital inclusion. The second one is the interoperability among platforms. We see that if MSME are using pure e-commerce, then the connection between fintech, digital payment, logistic, and their core, their back end are integrated. But most of the business in Cambodia are selling through social media. And if they're using e-commerce, those e-commerce are not integrated into their inventory management, their finance, and the payment also directly just into the bank account, not into the back office. The connection among those platforms would allow MSME to have a higher quality of data, reduce the need for a double recording, and also kind of a single truth for their data. And that will lead for the lending. And from my personal experience, last year we facilitated close to $500,000 loan for unsecured lending with our partner bank. We partner with more than 10 banks here in Cambodia using the data. But the main challenge remain on the quality of data that coming in, because it relies mainly for manual input. So the interconnection among platforms would allow a better data integrity that bank can have a better trust on if the transaction of sale are coming directly from e-commerce, and then the charge of the delivery and the payment are from the bank. So there is no temper of the quality of data that increase the confidence of the bank. And of course, with the introduction of insurance coming in, that as a company, we're also working with the insurance now to provide another layer of trust for the bank to offer the unsecured lending. So there's a lot of things are happening here in terms of interoperability across platform, but it remains, you know, for the bigger player, connection to them, it's kind of no. You know, we begin connecting to the regional or international player for the local fintech, for local startup, it's remain a challenge. But connecting to bank, it's now become easier and easier for startup. But one thing I think it would be very useful is the ability to connect to CamDX itself for digital startup. Of course, there's a work is going on at the moment to allow those connections, because the ability to connect to CamDX allow more innovation in terms of validation, the due diligence process, especially on the SME, B2B interaction. If we go to supply chain financing, unsecured lending, those are more efficient, and also the quality of data from that connection would improve the way how a startup also, particularly in the fintech area, to work with bank. The last comment related to labor security. There's a highlight within the report discuss about that, because with the new form of digital platform, the nature of employment is different. So they are not an employee anymore; they are a subcontractor, a freelancer. So there's no security. That's also, it's already stated in the report. There's two. It's a benefit and the cost. The benefit is that it's especially young people have the flexibility to work and earn money at the same time. We have similar thing. We employ close to 40 people who now working in their village at the moment, are serving agricultural cooperative, earning $300 to $500, even higher than what they earn in the city. But are we employing them as an employee? No, they are just a subcontractor. So that's the challenge in terms of career growth. You know, they are not employee; they are just a contractor. They can work with multiple entity, and for the career growth for them, it's kind of we need to find a way how can we secure that. And another one is also the withholding tax and the tax salary dilemma. If it is a tax salary for the business, it's lower to pay the tax. But employing them as a freelancer, the business is now paying 15% in withholding tax. So that's as a challenge. So the tax model for this gig economy, people who are working on the free time and all that. So mostly are going either business choosing either withholding tax, which is very expensive, or going to the salary. And the last one, there's a need for a better engagement for TVET institution to improve the digital skill. We talk to business on how what do they see the role of the TVET? Business said no, they don't see any need for the payroll the TVET. But there is a huge need for them, but particularly in the province, to play this better role to help improve, to increase the digital talent for MSME at an affordable rate. You know, if they hire a university graduate, it's expensive, but the TVET provide a better alternative for that. So there is a need for a better engagement or better participation of TVET institution in terms of digital skill for the digital platform to thrive. So that's all my comment. Thank you, David.
Yeah, Kirira, thank you so much. It's really valuable to get I think the perspective from the Young Entrepreneur Association and also your own direct experience. And you touched on many of the issues that were being raised in the Q&A. There have been some more questions coming in. I will take some of those and try and direct them towards the presenter, James, and the panelists, and to get some responses. If people would like to ask a question, you can also raise your hand. I think we have about 20 minutes for Q&A and discussion. One of the themes that came up in different ways was the readiness for Cambodia, whether it's in the provinces, whether it's in the city, the ability to Cambodianization of platforms, of the digital economy, and so on. And there are also a couple of questions about prospects for digital platforms and digital economy after COVID-19. So we know that the pandemic has been accelerating things, but after the pandemic, will the growth slow down? What is the future for digital platforms? And how did ADB create these estimates, these projections? So perhaps I could invite Yasu and James, maybe you would like to give a perspective on the longer term outlook in terms of this digital platforms and the transformation of economic productive activity, the way that markets work. Is this really a longer term phenomenon? How do we, how to analyze that in terms of long-term forecasting and modeling? And then what would be the policy implications for countries which are at an earlier stage in development and also maybe relatively smaller? If we say globally and nationally, there's a first mover advantage, there's all the network effects, what can policymakers in Cambodia do to stimulate local platform development without becoming too protectionist and closing off from innovation? So maybe Yasu and James, perhaps you would like to share your reflections on some of those issues, those questions.
Oh, okay, thank you very much for very nice presentation, and also quite stimulating comments and questions. First, I'd like to recap James' presentation. I think digitalization will play a very critical role in order to support so-called building back better, meaning that building back more inclusive and building back greener. And as James said, over the next 5 years or so, digitalization, if successful, will generate 15%, roughly speaking, 15% growth of GDP. So I think digitalization is really critical. And also at this stage, from the different indexes, penetration of digital platform and also network infrastructure readiness, etc. Cambodia is among the countries where infrastructures are still developing. So I think there is a huge potential to unleash this potential benefit of digitalization. And again, recapping James' point, I think in order to materialize this, first of all, digital literacy or e-literacy is critical. So a person should be able to use different apps and different platforms. And then next necessary condition is, of course, accessibility and affordability of ICT infrastructure. So I think ICT infrastructure investments are really indispensable. And then after, you can use the app and you can place, you can get connected to internet and you can place order. Of course, the financial settlements and e-payment systems are necessary. And also when it comes to getting ordered goods delivered, you need a very efficient, effective logistics infrastructure or transport infrastructure. So all these have a complementarity and indispensable component. So I think in order to unleash huge potential of digitalization, some basic infrastructure investment continue to be made. And on top of this, cybersecurity, privacy issues, and also fair competition, in order to include especially micro and small and medium scale enterprises, that's also indispensable component to setting up a whole ecosystem of digitalization, inclusive ecosystem of digitalization. So I think these are really necessary. And again, Cambodia has a great potential. And finally, but not least, I'd like to comment on one of the presentation by Dr. Bannaris, actually Cambodianization of digital platform. I thought this is a really important point. And indeed, government, Cambodia and other Asian government started putting out a huge package, fiscal and also monetary and also liquidity policies in order to support household individuals' well-being as well as supporting businesses. And so naturally, budget deficit increase and government public debt GDP ratio increase. And I think this is really necessary in order to support the economy and also cope with unexpected huge shocks generated by COVID-19. But returning back to this Cambodianization of digital platform, I think tax capacity, building up tax capacity is really important because a huge shift to digitalization and enhanced profit of digital economy is already there. So I think for the government to be able to tax and utilize these benefits for a wide variety of inclusive better, that's quite important. So in order to facilitate this, indeed, ADB earlier this month established domestic resource mobilization and international tax cooperation hub, regional hub. And I think DRM, domestic resource mobilization, is really needed in order to maximize resources and profits generated by digital economy in order to make it sustainable, this building back greener and building back more inclusive. So I think these are my quick response. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Great. Yasu, thank you so much.
Thank you, David. May I add to Yasu's points?
Please, go ahead. Yeah.
In terms of the readiness of Cambodia as well as the important policy priority, when I look at the readiness index, the weakest part for Cambodia is actually in terms of people, which is really related to the ability and literacy of people, business, and government to understand and interact with this digital platform. So really, investments in education, investment in digital and financial literacy are quite important. In terms of priority, because Cambodia is actually in the nascent stage of using this digital technology, there are transactional and basic technology that are essential. Of course, first one is really the connectivity, because still in Cambodia, connectivity is very low. But there are also laws that are important. For example, the role of e-signature, the importance of digital ID, because that's actually, digital ID is a facilitating technology, and it actually increased trust. And then strengthening as well privacy and data security, because if you're not confident that your data and privacy will be protected, you may actually be hesitant to join the digital platform. So I think the policy to strengthen digital ID and actually roll it out is quite important. Then there are also transactional technology, which is really the payment system, and what Yasu said, logistics, investment in logistics, transport, which interface with the digital and online transformation are quite essential. I would also like to answer the question of Vanarit in terms of SDG, because I only have one slide there. The discussion on how digital platform can actually aid SDG is actually quite huge. But I think the short answer there is, I reckon the power of digital platform is actually in terms of the data that it produces. Because if you look at all these problems of SDGs in terms of inequality, poverty, market failures actually occur because there are information gaps. And what this digital platform actually allows is, by using data and algorithm, is that actually generates those information that can address some of these problems. Also, these digital platforms are using intelligent systems, which actually allows us to address some of the old problems in a new way. Like, for example, now during the pandemic, we have problems in terms of marketing the agricultural products of farmers. And now what we are seeing is that with the use of digital platforms, farmers are able to sell directly to customers rather than going through the big business. So I think this use of intelligent system is actually a game changer in terms of how we respond to addressing the SDG. Last but not the least, I think, is Digital platform and digital economy is creating a new policy framework and better regional cooperation to address challenges that actually spreads across borders like the pandemic. And I think this will be very important in addressing the SDG. On the prospects, David, our view at the ADB is this increased usage, adoption, and trust of digital platform will continue even after the pandemic. One thing that the pandemic did was it actually raised the trust for digital platform because we don't have any other option. Like, I'm relatively old and I'm a cash basis person before the pandemic, but as a result of the lockdown, I don't have any option but really to rely on a digital payment platform. So I had my GCash, I have my PayPal, and then I have my bank-to-bank transfer, and everything I do now is recorded, and my wife can actually ask me, "Oh, how did you use this?" Unlike before, when you do cash, no, you can actually do some things. You go out and you don't report your expenditure. So I really reckon that this trend will be a permanent trend. And when I looked at the market projection in early 2020, the projection was actually digital adoption will grow at a rate of about 20%. I've been checking now, and the market projection from consulting firms like McKinsey and others are suggesting that it could actually increase even 35% in the next 5 years, which is actually quite high. In terms of longer term outlook, and this is actually where I think Yasu has really led economic research in looking at the technologies. What we are seeing is that Asia has always been at the forefront of technological development and technological adoption. And I think in the longer term outlook is the power in the region. If you look at the interface of digital technology with integrating technology like drones, for example, cloud computing, GIS, and even with human in terms of genetics is quite rapid. So I think the longer term outlook is that we will see this rapid integration of technology, not only in terms of business application, but in terms of this new integrating technology like drones, GIS, which actually raises the role of technology in terms of how we do things. And even when you look into this artificial intelligence integrating with the human beings, no, this is really quite, sometimes I'm scary because I tend to watch the Terminator movies where at the end, right, the machines suddenly have their own consciousness and conducts war against human beings. But I think that's happening. And you know, so for example, in terms of genomics, they're also applying all these digital platforms. So I think in the longer term, I think this will be an exponential rise, much like what we are seeing in terms of COVID. And even the application of technology in COVID is also quite amazing, I think. And that's all, David, back to you.
James, thank you. Yeah, there's a lot, very thought-provoking. I'd like to maybe take a couple of the issues that were raised by Dr. Vanarith and also by Kiriroth, and just sort of seek feedback from Excellency Silava and also Dr. Pum. You know, I think we talk about digital platforms, and a lot of the potential and the value that they generate comes from data. You know, we even hear about data as the new oil and big data and all of these things. You know, Dr. Vanarith talked a bit about cybersecurity, and also the issue of data privacy came up also in the Q&A aspect. So one question I think would be to what extent that's already within the thinking of government in the new digital economy and society strategies, and then also in the coordination mechanisms, the councils and so on. But the other aspect is related to interoperability. So Kiriroth, I think, described the phenomenon or the challenge quite well, which is that many of the businesses who are developing digital platforms, of course, they're trying to build their business and build a kind of empire in a sense. And so as they attract more users onto a platform, that user base gives them an opportunity to develop additional service offerings and so on. So it may not be in their private interest to promote interoperability, data sharing, and integration of different services in ways that creates opportunities for other businesses. But from a user perspective and maybe public policy perspective, it could be preferable. So I think a question there is related also to data privacy, data sharing, and questions around cybersecurity is how would the government approach this issue of interoperability, both in terms of regulating the foreign-owned platforms operating in Cambodia, but then also with the regulation of the domestic local platforms. So maybe Excellency Silava and Dr. Pum, it would be great to hear your thoughts on those issues. Thank you.
I start first.
Oh, please go ahead. Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you, David. I would like to respond in a general way because I'm not expert in digital economy or IT stuff. I want to maybe elaborate a little bit on our approach to digitization or digital transformation and try to relate that to the question on the benefit of digitization or digitized public services and so on, and also the issue of cyber security and the related to interoperability and stuff. So in terms of our approach, I think we study different models of different countries. The working group, I think the team mission to Estonia or to Korea. We look at the country close to us like Thailand or Vietnam. So we come to a consensus that we might not copy from maybe specific country, but to go on a middle ground and that country context, take Cambodia context into consideration and how open, how ready we are, and try to adopt to this. I want to say, want to point out one discussion on the priority of developing a digital economy. The Korean model, they try to focus on ICT first, ICT to develop mass, critical mass for digital economy market. So the idea is when you have a strong ICT and ICT industry, that you can be ready and can transform quickly into a digital economy. But Estonia model, they more on the high-end value chain, like on the Internet of Things, on the role of what you call the robotic and so on, and the more advanced platform of the digital economy. But for, back to Cambodia, I think if you take the presentation of Jeff, I think clearly that we score very low in terms of readiness to digital transformation. But I think there are potential to move up quickly. One thing I want to point out, in terms of openness, Cambodia can attract a lot of ADI. Cambodia are very open to new ideas, to new technology, so less regulatory constraint and so on. I think there are advantages for that purpose. But you have to, at the same time, you have to build skill to make your people more educated. But here I just also want to point out that different factor, combination of factors contribute to the growth of the digital economy. So when you're planning for this development, you cannot work by building block, but rather try to connect different factors or connect different activities so that you can grow up with that. For the cyber security in the consideration, I think there are two different views. One, to treat it as a subsidiary, as a kind of background or foundation to support the three pillars that I mentioned about digital business, digital government, and digital people. But there are considerations in terms of opinion that we should have an independent security or cyber committee as a part of the council in general. So there are discussions going on, and I hope that we will find a solution to that. So Cambodia institutional context will guide us on how we take this into consideration. For the benefit, I think should benefit, though we are at a very low end of the value chain of digital economy, but I hope over time, with the trigger of this COVID-19, the demand for these services and the new normal of economic activity, we can catch up and move very fast. So that's my rough comment on that. Thank you, David.
Yeah, thank you, Excellency. Now I'm, as in my role as moderator, I'm watching the time, and I realize that we're coming to the end of our 2-hour session. And so I think it will be soon time for the closing remarks. We tried to answer as many of the questions as we could in the chat box, the Q&A. So wherever possible, we gave a direct answer. I think some of the questions, they've sort of been addressed through the general discussion that we've been having. Maybe one thing I would just add is that there was a great question about women's involvement in the digital economy and in entrepreneurship, and what ADB could do to help. We are preparing a project with the Ministry of Women's Affairs to support this. And as I was typing an answer in the chat box, I noticed that of our 7 panelists, all men today, which is maybe a bit unfortunate, but I'm sure that there are many very dynamic and capable women in the Ministry of Economy and Finance. Certainly in ADB, we have some very high-powered and capable women leaders. And I'm sure also within the Young Entrepreneurs Association, it would also be the same. So I hope the next time either the moderator could be female, or we can also hear some of our women leaders as well. I think we're sort of almost at the end in terms of time. So as moderator, thank you to all of the panelists. It's been great. I'd now like to perhaps first to hand over to Dr. Sawada to give some closing remarks on behalf of ADB, and then we'll give the last word to the government. So Yasu, perhaps if over to you.
Thank you very much, David, and thank you very much, excellent panelists, and also His Excellency Ros Seraba, Secretary of State, Ministry of Economy and Finance, and also His Excellency Dr. Phat Pom, Under Secretary of State, MEF. Thank you very much for very lively and very useful discussion. I think ADB can help government engaging different activities to maximize the potential digitalization. First, I think government has been and will play a very critical role in facilitating adequate investment to support the infrastructure development, and also soft infrastructure such as fair competition, consumer protection, cybersecurity, etc., etc. So to set enabling environment for innovation and digital economy, I think government will play a critical role, and the ADB has been and will support as a close collaborator. And also, as discussed in the panel, digitalization will have a negative downside, digital divide. So in order to soften digital divide and inequalization of economy and society arising from digitalization, I think government will play a very, very important role through providing a social protection policy and also some type of labor regulation, labor support policy. So in this respect, I think government can also fully utilize benefit of digitalization in its delivery of public goods and services, and also improving governance and compliance. As a user of technology, government can maximize benefit of digitalization. In this respect, ADB has been collaborating with the Cambodian government through a technical assistance project titled Supporting Digital Cambodia for Inclusive Development Project. And especially I'd like to highlight supporting and helping national identification system. That's a very critical, I think, reflecting India's successfully introducing biometric ID, and the ID system really improve effectiveness and efficiency of employment guarantee program in India. So I think this is an area really government can maximize the potential benefit arising from digitalization as a user of technology. So with that, I think we had a very, very lively and constructive discussion. Thank you very much again for distinguished panelists and speakers. Thank you. Over to you, David.
Thank you, Yasu. So if we may, I think perhaps hand over to Dr. Pum, if you could maybe give some closing remarks on behalf of the Ministry of Economy and Finance.
Thank you so much, David. So I'm glad again to attend the seminar. And then on behalf of Ministry of Economy and Finance, we would like to thank Dr. Rosilwa, Secretary of State of the MEF, Dr. Sawada, the Chief Economist and the General Writers of the ADB, thank David, Jane, and other fellow from Cambodia, from the Young Entrepreneur, from Asian Vision Institute, and some other participants. So I think it is very important that the digitalization and digital platform is very critical for us. And as a government, we understand very well about the challenges that raised by the private sector and some others, the issue that faced by some other country when they develop the digitalization. And beside the role highlighted by Dr. Sawada about how to provide the enabling factors for the ecosystem, make sure that the digitalization and digital transformation will be in a good shape in the future. At the same time, to minimize the risk, the government have to play another good role as a coordinator. I think we also highlighted about this one. So how to play the key role, because there's some investment have to be done by the government, infrastructure, cyber security, and other things is that from the government side. But we need also have a very strong and active participation from the private sector, especially from the young entrepreneur, because they understand their business very well. They know how to design their business model, and then they will also face a lot of challenges, and the way that they raise all the challenges to the government, and the government know how to do that. So I think at the beginning, His Excellency Rosilwa also mentioned that MEF also play a very important role as a coordinating agency. So we play a lot of role. For instance, at my own capacity as a Deputy Secretary General for the Committee on Economic and Financial Policy, we play a very important role as a coordinator. So our Deputy Prime Minister is the chairman of the committee, and we play a role as a like a general secretariat for that one. So we communicate with all the most of the line ministry across Cambodia to join together. And then I think we also highlighted a little bit, some task force, we cannot work alone. Ministry of Finance cannot work alone. We need some other stakeholders from other government. So they join together, and I think maybe some of you are aware, some task force, we call it ad hoc task force or ad hoc committee. So this one of the task force assigned by the government in order to take care of a specific issue or urgent issue. For sure, in the digitalization or digital economy, there are very specific task force, inter-ministerial or inter-institution to join together to work that one, because there's so many things. And AMIF play a very key role as a coordinator. So coordination is very important from us. So I think beside the challenges that what we have, and this is kind of learning by doing, the government try to understand the challenges, try to listen to a lot of stakeholders, what are the issues and how much we can do and how much we need assistance from other development partners. Like for example, what kind of TA we need from the ADB, and ADB is very good enough to jump in when Cambodia is in need or something. That is very good part that we work together with everyone in order to develop that one. And we understand that digitalization is very critical, very important, but at the same time, it's also very risky because in terms of security or in terms of the privacy of the data. And then the government at the same time also established the CAMDAC I mentioned earlier, the Cambodia Change Data. This will be like a centralized data center for the future. And this is going to in a good shape now in terms of growth, but we need a lot of time to work together, a lot of effort from all the stakeholders. So there are a lot of potential to growth for the digitalization. At the same time, we need to minimize the challenges and how to overcome all the challenges. And we need a lot of support and active participation from everyone in Cambodia, as well as from our global and regional development partner. So to end my closing remark, I would like to thank to the ADB for support for all the TA provided when Cambodia is needed, and so many other projects that ADB have done for Cambodia. I think recently there's so many things related to the vaccination thing as well. The ADB also have provided some fund for us. If we need, we can have some fund from ADB for our vaccination campaign. So once again, thank you so much for all the participants. Thank you for the ADB. Thank you for all the colleagues from the Ministry of Economy and Finance and other participants that we don't really see them here. They have registered and participate in our discussion. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Dr. Pum, thank you. I think that now concludes today's webinar. To all of the attendees who joined, thank you for joining. I hope that you found it informative. We will follow up with an email, so with sharing the reports and I guess a link to the meeting recording as well for those who requested that. Finally, I guess just on behalf of ADB Cambodia Resident Mission, big thanks to colleagues in ADB for their support. A big thanks to the Ministry of Economy and Finance for co-hosting the webinar, Dr. Pum and Excellency Sawada. It was really fantastic to have this partnership. And then a big thank you to Dr. Vanarith and Kiri Roth. It was really fantastic to have your perspectives and your inputs. It made it a much richer discussion, more complete also. So thanks to everyone. That concludes our webinar. Have a great day and have a nice weekend as well. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, David.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.